Okay, so in this video we're talking about determining rules, and unfortunately I'm not going to be actually with you for this lesson because I will be at Year 7 orientation because I'm a Year 7 mentor. So it will be expected that you work through these booklet questions and then complete exercise 4E. So this video is just going to show you how to answer these booklet questions. So the first one asks us to find the value of A for this equation, which passes through 3 and 13. So what we're going to do is, because we have this unknown, I'm going to plug in my x value into my x spot and my y value into my y spot and then solve for A. So what I'm going to get is 13 equals A over 3 minus 5. I'm going to plus 5 to both sides. I'm going to get 18 over A over 3 times 3 to both sides. 18 times 3 is 54. It's going to be A. Therefore, my answer will be Y equals 54 over X minus 5. And hopefully what you'll notice here is that this is a rectangular hyperbola, which will be dilated and will be translated vertically down by 5 spaces. But this, just this, will be my final answer. Again, you'd use the same logic here. I would sub in my values, and then solve for my unknown. And I'm going to leave this for you to do. I'll provide the work solutions on the OneNote. Let's keep moving. Next, we have this question. So if we have this template and we know that this square root graph passes through 5 and 6 and negative 3 and 2, now we need to find A and H. A and H. The way that we're going to do this is by using our CAS and the simultaneous equations. So I'm going to plug in my values again. So I'm going to have 6 equals A, the square root of 5 minus H, and then I'm going to do it again to create another equation, plugging in these values this time. I'll get 2 equals A, the square root of negative 3 minus H. Now I have two equations. I come and get my CAS calculator, which is over here. I open up a new document, I go menu, I go algebra, I go solve, I come here, I want this one, and then I put in my values. It's going to be 6 equals A square root of 5 minus H. Come down here, this will be 2 equals A the square root of minus 3 minus H, comma, my unknowns are A and H. Whoops. I need to put a comma between them. And I hit solve. I get A equals 2 and H equals negative 4. So A equals 2 and H equals negative 4. And here I would use the exact same logic, create two equations, and then use my CAS to solve my unknowns. I again will provide the work solutions here for you to do at your own pace, but you should try this question yourself. Let's keep moving. Now we're told to determine the equation of a truncus with the asymptotes x equals 0 and y equals 2, and it passes through 1 and 4. So I could begin by putting in my asymptotes onto this graph. It's not essential for us to do this, but it's just going to help us understand what we're doing. Then I could draw it as a truncus, so it's going to look like this. This is just a really rough sketch. That's what it's going to look like. I could then think about what a general truncus looks like. I know it's going to be dilated or constricted by something. It's going to have x squared on the bottom, and then it's going to be plus some number, which is going to correspond to my translation. If my x asymptote is located at 0, I know that it's not moving horizontally in any direction. And if my y asymptote is at 2, I know it's actually shifted 2 up. So my answer would be y equals a over, it's not translated horizontally, it is moving up 2 vertically. I need to still solve what this a is, so I'm going to sub in the point 1 and 4. So 1 and 4 will be 4 equals a over 1 squared is 1 plus 2, minus 2 from both sides will be 2 equals a over 1. I don't have to actually write that over 1, it's just going to be 2 equals a. Therefore, if I was to write out my full solution to this, it's going to be y equals 2 over x squared plus 2. And that would be my final answer. Now we come to this question, determine the equation of a rectangular hyperbola with the asymptotes this and this. Again, I could give this a quick sketch. X is going to equal 3, so that's that asymptote. And y is going to equal 1, so this asymptote. I could then write out the general rule for this. It's going to be a over x and then plus something. I know it's been translated horizontally, which means, if we remember, I'm going to have a minus 3 because it's going in the right hand direction, and it's going 1 up, so it's going to be plus 1. Then in order to find what my a is, I'm going to put my point in. It's going to be negative 2 and 3. So I'm going to sub in that value. So I'm going to get 3 equals a over negative 2 minus 3 plus 1 plus minus 1 from both sides to get 2 equals a over negative 5. I'm running out of room, but it's clear that once I times both sides by negative 5, I'm going to get negative 10 equals a. Therefore, my final answer will be y equals negative 10 over x minus 3 plus 1. This negative tells me it's reflected in the y-axis, so it's actually, when I draw it, going to look something like this. And that makes sense because it passes through the point negative 2, 3, which would be negative 2, or somewhere there. Not precisely, but let's say there. So it is on the side, which tells me that yes, it is reflected in my y-axis. Let's now move on to the next question. Again, I'm dealing with a rectangular hyperbola. This time I actually see that it's going to be positive, but that's not that important. What's more important is that I notice that I have an x asymptote at x equals 1, a y asymptote at 0, and for the time being, that's all we need to know. We also need to know the line it passes through is 4 and 2. Therefore, my rule will be y equals, I'm going to have some dilation factor. It's translated horizontally 1 to the right, and it's moving up 0 spaces. So it's going to be y equals a over x minus 1. To find what my a is, I'm going to sub in my value 4 and 2. So I'm going to put 2 in here. A over 4 minus 1. 2 equals a over 3 times both sides by 3 is going to be 6 over a. So therefore, my final answer will be y equals 6 over x minus 1. Now let's go to my next question, find the rule for this graph. If we think what our general rule is for a circle, it's going to be x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. These values here, my h and my k, correspond to my center. So I could go here and go here. I could take my y value and so I could take my x value from here, which is 5, and my y value from here, which is -4, and I found my center. I then could go x minus 5 squared plus y plus 4 squared equals, my radius will simply be the distance from here to here, so I could just look at my x values. So I'm starting at 0 and I'm going to 5. It's going to be 5 squared, which is 25, and that's simply how I would solve it. So x minus 5 squared plus y plus 4 squared equals 25. Let's now move on to this. Now I'm dealing with a square root graph, and I could begin by, the question would normally tell you that is going to be in this form, x minus h plus k. In this case, my h and my k values are going to correspond to my endpoint. So it's going to be y equals a, the square root of x plus 4 plus 5, because that will be -4, +5 for my endpoint. I now need to solve what my a is, and I'll do that by subbing in the point 5 and 0, which we are told here. So then we come here, this will be 0, a, the square root of 5 plus 4 plus 5, I'll minus 5 from both sides and be left with a, the square root of 9, which is going to be minus 5 equals 3a. So I'm going to get minus 5 over 3 equals a. And that will be my a value. So to get my final answer, I would simply put this into that spot. Perfect. Last but certainly not least is figuring out my semicircle. And I could actually figure out my semicircle by beginning by writing out the general form for a circle, which is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. My center is -1 and 2. So that means it's going to be x plus 1 squared plus y minus 2 squared equals, and my radius is simply going to be, in this case, I could just take my x values. I'm going from -2 all the way to -1, and here I'm going from -1 to 0. So it's quite clear that I'm moving -2 to -1, -1 to 0. I'm moving 1. So it's going to be 1 squared, which is 1. But now I need to rearrange this in order that it's a semicircle. So what am I going to do? I'm going to rearrange so that I'm solving for y. So it's going to be y minus 2 squared equals 1 minus x plus 1 squared. Then I'm going to square root both sides. I'm going to get y minus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 1 minus x plus 1 squared. That's a bit of a wonky looking square root. Then I'm going to plus 2 to both sides. Y equals plus or minus 1 minus x plus 1 squared plus 2. Perfect. So this is telling me that my center is -1 and 2. But now the question is, would I leave it as plus and minus? I wouldn't. It's just going to be minus because I'm dealing with this part of the circle. This value here tells me what my radius is, which is clearly 1. And therefore I've found my rule. Hopefully this video was useful to you in figuring these things out. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. And there we go. That's everything we needed to know for determining rules. Hopefully this was helpful.